Check, check.
That was Mary. Yeah. Okay.
Do you have enough juice, or do you need AC power for any reason?
Just to be sure.
All right. Hello and welcome. I hope everybody's finding food. For those of you who don't know or haven't found it yet, it's over in the back corner, and please do your best to direct anyone else who walks into the cafeteria to tell them where it is. I'm sure they'll find it, though, by the smell. This is a very informal session, and while there are not very many people here right now, we suspected that this might be the case given the fact that a lot of people are working. It is Thursday evening. So we're expecting people to kind of trickle in as time goes on. And but this is a very very casual, very informal type of, you make me nervous over there with that thing. Very casual, informal type of meeting, so we really want your input tonight. I guess I should have started by introducing myself. My name is Letha Riley, and I'm on the Master Plan Steering Committee here in town, and several of our committee members are here as well tonight. If you see any of us walking around with name badges like this, we could either be on the Master Plan Steering Committee, and that'll be labeled as such, on members of town staff, or our consultant team, TPUDC, Town Planning Urban Design Collaborative. And we have two gentlemen from TPUDC here tonight. They're Brian Wright and Matt Noonkester up front, and they're going to take the show in a few minutes. But I did have a few remarks. Again, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. We really do want your feedback. And this is really a kickoff meeting for our master plan. For those of you unfamiliar, the last master plan done in Londonderry was done in 2007. And the planning board, Art Rugg is in the back there. He's the chairman of the planning board. They commissioned a new master plan to be done, and we formed a committee last summer, and we have committee members from various boards and committees throughout the town, dedicated volunteers who meet once a month and then some during the month to help make sure that we move the master plan process forward. We did hire a consultant, as I said before, TPUDC, and some of their members are here tonight, and they're going to help us kick off this plan. Now, it's important to know that basically this really is a kickoff. No decisions are going to be made as a result of tonight's meeting or the big Planapalooza 6-day festivities that we have planned May 31st through June 5th. The idea here is to really get your ideas out on the table, no matter how crazy they seem, no matter how mundane they seem. We want all of your ideas. And from that free flow of ideas will come really good ones as well, that we come together as a community and really find a nice future for our town. Okay? So I do have one announcement. If you might have seen out in the hallway some brochures for Leadership Londonderry. I'm a huge proponent of this class, of this program, because I went through it a few years ago and I really, really enjoyed it, and I think you will too. Pollyann Winslow, who's here in the audience, she could answer any questions you might have for it, but it's a wonderful program. It helps educate, inform, and really give you some insight as to how town government works. It was very enlightening for me. There are representative speakers from all factions of the town, from the town side, the school side, the airport authority, Parks and Recs, you name it. You learn all about it here. So I would highly recommend anyone who's interested to talk to Pollyann, go on our website, the town website, and you can get information there as well. Okay? All right. So without further ado, Brian, I will hand the microphone over to you, or you will get your own.
You haven't heard what I'm going to say yet. Don't clap just yet. So, okay, so thanks so much. Really glad to be here. I am. Thank you. I didn't know how to fan club. All right. So what I want to do tonight is not take too much of your time. Want to hopefully get you guys excited and fired up about what's to come. I want to hear from you all, most importantly. If you can't tell, I'm not from around here. I'll try not to say y'all, but I came from, well, actually before I came here today, I was in Vermont. We're doing several projects in Vermont. But I'm actually from Tennessee. And you may say, what does a guy from Tennessee know about Londonderry? Really not much. And that's the idea. Because you guys are going to tell us what we need to know. What we do know is how to help you guys figure out the vision for the future and help you articulate it and turn it into a plan that everybody can be really excited and proud of for the future. I have with me Matt Noonkester. He's my partner in crime today, and Matt is, he'll be jumping up here in a minute and joining me. I do all the touchy-feely parts of the presentation, and then Matt comes in and gets down to the nitty-gritty. So for those of you who like nitty-gritty, that will come too. And so Matt, he's really excellent at that. So please, if you have questions, I'm going to open it up at the end for sure. If you can't help it, I'm happy for you just to jump in any minute and say, hey, wait, before you go on, I have to ask you something. We've got a great team, in addition to Matt and I, that you'll be meeting more in the Planapalooza that we'll tell you more about. But for today, it's just the two of us. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, I don't know much about this place, and you guys are going to tell us all that we need to know. In addition to what you tell us, we are going to do actual research and look at data so that we can know more than just anecdotal information. However, what we find is that the anecdotes and the things that people from this place are every bit as important as some fact or figure or statistic. So the thing that's great about it is, though, about us being not from here, is that we're completely impartial. Whatever you guys want to do, so long as it's reasonable, so long as it can be done, I don't have an opinion one way or the other about it. Now that said, I'm not this wishy-washy guy, as you'll figure out throughout this process. We have a lot of ideas about, what are some really cool things that are happening all over the country, because we work all over the country. We know things that are happening here in the region, and we count on you guys to tell us the specifics that are happening here, and I'll talk about some of the things that I've learned so far. We haven't done much, and we won't have done much besides a little bit of research prior to the Planapalooza. But what I have done so far is I've actually sat down one-on-one with people that live here and talked to them and said, tell me about this place. Tell me what I need to know to start that, so I could actually make a presentation that was somewhat relevant to you. Hopefully, you'll find that to be the case. But no preconceived notions is the kind of the bottom line, because planners are notorious for coming to town with this bag of tricks. And they say, even sometimes with a plan folded up in their back pocket, and saying, here you go, at the end of their time with you. Here's what we came up with together, right? And then they try to convince you of what they've come up with. Hopefully you won't be surprised or concerned when we literally come here with blank pieces of paper for the Planapalooza. So here are the few things that I do know. There's some hot buttons, some hot topics. I don't know what they mean yet. To me, these are just words. This is just a word I can't say, and this is some road that it's part of. There's a I-93 getting widened, I hear. That was controversial. The airport access road and the big one, the big W word, the Woodmont. One thing you'll also learn is that sometimes I just have to bring this stuff up and just say it and get it out of the way. Other planners like to just shy away from things and hope nobody brings it up. I heard that you guys don't do that here. You guys bring stuff up. So so wanted to make sure that we were on top of things. So one of the things that we do bring to the table, that we, if you will, if we have a bag of tricks at all, it's about thinking holistically, about looking at the big picture, looking at all of the parts and pieces all together, rather than taking things individually and pulling it all out. Rather than focusing so much on things, we want to take a generalist approach However, you need to be a specialist on some things to know the details to make sure you get the big picture right as well. So that comes back to the data. That's why when we come for the Planapalooza, we'll have transportation engineers. So it's not just a bunch of people who have some thoughts about how traffic should go. It's actually people who know about how traffic should go. So sometimes being a specialist is important, but our specialists actually understand the generalist perspective, and they know how to bring to light this idea that all of the elements of the town are interconnected one to the next with these little thin threads, and you can't mess with one without messing with the other in the end. So we bring that to the table, and then looking for connections between these things allows us to begin to think outside of the box and actually have some really interesting discussions with you guys. So we try to take it on in two parts. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with your existing master plan. Okay, great. So the existing master plan is, it's pretty typical. It's like a lot of the other master plans in the region. It's got some words, it's got some pictures, it's got some good ideas. It's and you use it as a guide as you move forward and make decisions in the future. We like to do things a little bit differently to take it to the next level. We like to look at things from the tech side of things, and so we bring to light, from discussions like this, what are the community desires? What are you guys looking for in the plan? And then we like to look at that data that I talked about. From the data, we find insights. So it's not just data for data's sake. And you have insights. The insights bring us to a set of principles. The principles have tools that are associated with them, and the tools are applied to the city. There are apps, right, the applications. On the other side of things, you have visual applications. You have catalyst sites, so if there's a particular area that needs specific focus and study on, we actually pull out our pencils and sharpen them up. We're not just doing bubble diagrams. We start saying, okay, what does this need to look like? And we, with your input, begin to help you guys dream of that. We're looking at illustrative plans, looking at diagrams, and then artist renderings, actually bringing artists with us to draw the things that you guys tell us so that we can visualize them together rather than it just being words and pictures and photographs from somewhere else. So I keep talking about data because a lot of times data is the primary focus when the consultant comes to town, because if they've got their data, they can say, here's why I did what I did. And it sort of it dehumanizes the process, in my opinion, because for us, the most important part is what you guys are thinking. But you have your data, and data starts off in stacks, and then it turns to piles, and then the piles turn into this, and at the end, not only is your consultant drowning in data, but you guys are too. You end up with a plan, in most cases, that no one actually cares to really look at. I was really actually pleasantly surprised how many people raised their hand, that you're familiar with your existing one, because a lot of places we go, no one raises their hand. That's right. This is Londonderry, and we'll talk more about what is Londonderry in a minute, because I'm going to ask you guys about that. But here's what we do with data. So we look for relevant data, things that are actually important, things that tell us things, and we turn it into something that people can actually care to look at. We call it infographics. You see them in every magazine these days. It's very user-friendly. It's the most important things, and you can use infographics for a number of things. Survey results from the phone survey, demographic studies. Here's what we just did in Burlington, Vermont, and it's all helpful. Now, sometimes when we find an interesting piece of data, like in one project, we say, okay, look, we've realized in this town that there was, not this town, but another, that they actually were missing a certain population. They had people that were very young, and they had lots of people who were getting much older, and they had a huge gap in the middle of their demographics. So what they were also, on the other hand, hoping to do is increase their creativity, their ideas, because this is sort of the idea economy these days, and finding that it just so happens that the people in the middle aren't the only ones who are creative, but they're the ones who are most often likely to take entrepreneurial risks and things. So we go to places that have lots of creative people, and they have real estate offices like this called the Cool Space Locator, because in most cities, creative people want to be in cool spaces. But to do that, to have a place like this, you have to have enough cool spaces for these people to make a living selling and renting them. And most.
Where do you find the cool space?
Where?
I do not know where the cool space was.
Well, you have to go to the realtor and ask them, I'm looking for some cool space to start a business, and then they tell you where to go. But really what happens is, if they just went to the locals and asked them, they could tell them instead of having to pay a realtor. So then the guy or gal who wants the cool space here is in their garage, starting, thinking about things and making things and innovating. And what started off in the garage workshop ends up becoming an industry for the city that they're in. And so his little wind turbine in his garage turns into a green industry, and he's selling these things all over the world, and that happens. And then as you see, smart growth is smart economics according to this report, and they, studies are showing that there actually is economic benefit rather than just the quality of life things that people have been thinking about with smart growth for years. Now, what else does that mean? How do you respond to that? How do you apply that information and that knowledge? Well, you know that people who are, these days, creative, and the guy that was in there working on the little wind turbine, find things important to them like buy fresh, buy local, farmers markets, etc. And so you can take that information and then highlight and feature these kinds of things in the town or the city. And that ends up being really important. Now, some master plans actually take a snapshot of this moment. Here's what's going on today, and then you can look at it, and it's very nice for historical purposes, but like the fashions in the photograph, they fade over time, and they're completely irrelevant, and you go, why was I wearing that? Oh my gosh. On the other hand, sometimes master plans make these vague predictions for the future, but what most consultants won't tell you is they actually don't often know what the future will hold. And so it's just guessing and conjecture based on some data that they can use to prove the point of the thing that they thought for the future. What we like to do instead is actually focus on identifying fundamental guiding principles, things that are not fads, things that are not here today, gone tomorrow, things that are timeless, that have resonated with human habitation at all scales forever, since we've been grouping ourselves together in villages and towns and cities, and creating a toolkit so that the document actually enables you to make decisions about the future based on what's in the toolkit. So here you can see, I mentioned a minute ago, the principles. So let's say, so far we've heard a lot about people wanting to be able to walk. Right? That's a huge buzzword all over the country. Well, we heard it in Londonderry as well. We'd like to be able to walk more. So walkability would be a principle. The tools, how do you make something walkable? So you have a set of tools like sidewalks and street trees and those kinds of things. And then you have a plan that goes along with that. And within the plan, those tools are then applied, the applications of that, which are the apps, as I mentioned before. So that's kind of the way we like to think about things from a big picture perspective. Now, that's all great. But I keep going back to this, and you'll hear me say it 1,000 times every time you see me. The Planapalooza, the getting the word out, the getting the input in from all of the citizens of Londonderry, and I know there's more of you than is here tonight, right? And it's not like, oh, it's a nice day out, so we'll just frolic outside. It's like, what else could you have to do tonight instead, So I understand, you never know what you're going to get at these planning talks. But what I need you guys to do is start telling people about what's going on, about we're planning your future here, and don't just let these guys from out of town plan it. So how the Planapalooza works. It is a week-long, intense design workshop, multidisciplinary team. Now, you may have seen something like this in the past. You may have seen people do similar things before. We do things a little bit differently, hopefully in a way that you'll really enjoy. We want to bring the fun to this because this is fun. When people are having fun, they're actually open. Their minds are open. They're thinking about things. They're brainstorming with us. We like to, as quickly as possible, get away from the town and consultant relationship because you guys in our mind are part of the team. I bring my team, but really you're already all here. So here's the way it works. Opening presentation. Everybody's going to pile in, standing room only in the back. We need a bigger screen, right? And then we roll up our sleeves, all gathering around smaller tables because I know everyone doesn't like to talk in big groups. And you talk with your markers and you start drawing on the marker with the team and you say, here's what I was thinking, here's what we should do, what about this? I don't know about that. And then somebody at the table says, no, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. No, we should do this instead. And somebody says, I love that. And you go on and on and on, and it's really fun. The team arrives. This is the team, my team, and we'll take over a space. and we will set up an office. This, before my team got there, was an abandoned pool hall on an old main street. And so we actually had our small breakout meetings around a table that had green felt on top because it was a pool table that was left over. And we just pulled up chairs and everyone gouged their legs on the little holders there at the bottom. But it was really fun and we had a good time. So all of the people here, the team sets up, and at some point we have lunch apparently. We also then come and study. We will have done some work ahead of time, but a lot of the team members won't have been here at all until we show up for the week. And then we are very good at, because we have to do it all the time, getting up to speed on what's going on in this place versus whatever other place we were at. Because in the end, everything we do has to be of this place. It can't be what we did in Burlington or whatever other city we're working in. It has to be your Londonderry plan. Town. Thank you. God. I'm going to do that a lot. You'll have to forgive me. And I've heard at my own peril, will I say city? And I just broke the rule, I know. And I'll probably say urban at some point accidentally. And I've tried to edit it all out of the presentation in the appropriate locations. But when I spoke to council the other day, they warned me about that in my 8 minutes of talking. So we will have meetings about specific topics. And they'll likely be tied to the different elements that will be in the plan, such as transportation and infrastructure and open space and apples and all of those other kinds of things that are important here. And so we'll look at that. We'll have an interim presentation, at least one interim presentation, where we say, here's what we've heard so far from all of you, and here's how we've interpreted that. Here's what we've done with that. Here's what we've drawn, what we've written, what we've thought. And then you guys, we say, what do you think? Are we on track? Do we totally miss the boat here? What's going on? And you give us your input. And we actually, because the presentations, this one in particular, is going on in the same space that our office is set up in, we actually can hear, all the design team can hear what's being said, not just me. I don't have to go report to them. They actually will then start erasing. Somebody says, that's a terrible idea. You'll hear it in the back. Okay, oops. Okay, so now we can fix it. It's design real time. It's amazing. It's so cool. 21st century. And then we move into, after we hear from you, production, and we start cranking out the drawings. I don't know how many people can get around one drawing at one time. This is a small piece of paper. But we also keep on listening, because it's not over each time. Even though we moved into production, we're always working towards the end goal, which is the closing presentation. But that's just the closing presentation of the Planapalooza. It's not the closing presentation of this whole process. After we present to you, again, here's what we heard. Here's what else we did since you last told us what a good job we did halfway through, and made some revisions and tweaks and did some new things. Then we'll present that to you and open it up again and say, what do you think? How are we doing? What do we need to change? On and on and on. And then you'll see some of this, not just at the end. This will actually happen during the week. And when you see this, you don't have to call security. He's okay. He's supposed to be there because he was up all night. And that's just the way we work. We have to do that sometimes. It may be the first time somebody will be sleeping on the floor in, was it Moose Hill? Moose Hill, yeah. So that may be the first time, unless you guys have that at council meetings sometimes. So how do we measure success? Certainly, you just nod off on your chair, though. You don't get all the way under the table, right? So how do we measure success? For us, yes, we get excited about the things we draw and the things we write and the data and all of that stuff. But for us, a success story from a Planapalooza is this. This lady right here, I just finished the closing presentation, and I turned around, and I looked where she was sitting, and she was crying. And I said, oh, great. What did I say? And, you know, it was one of those moments where you have to decide, okay, I told him I was going to ask, are there any questions or comments? But maybe I should just say, good night, thank you for coming, you know. I took the risk, and I said, you in the third row, what do you think? And she stood up, and she said, you listened. You really listened. Because at the beginning of the week, she was like this. You know, that was what was happening. And so she totally got that we were there as this impartial third party to hear what everyone had to say without the preconceived notions, and her thoughts and hopes and dreams and aspirations were incorporated into the final plan. So that's her. We're still friends today. So how do we think about things? Again, big picture, zooming out. looking at, let's pretend that this is Londonderry. You start looking, because we know that there's a lot of concern here for open space conservation and thinking about how you deal with environmental sensitivity, etc. So where are places that you ought to think about growing in the future? What places ought you to conserve? And we look at from that level, and we start finding opportunities for conservation and development of different intensities, and using the amazing resource you got. I don't know if you guys get into GIS, but the GIS department here and the data you have is shocking. I can't even believe it. I go to some cities way bigger. No, I was going to say cities, big cities that have half of, not even half of the data of this town. And it is, so I've been amazed. So good job for doing that. Yes. Good John. So once we start to figure out with the GIS, the high-level stuff, then we want to make sure you guys all understand. And for some reason, this is kind of blurry, unfortunately. But start looking at from the outside in, from the areas where we don't touch and conserve to the areas where you start having agriculture, and moving in here where you start having this the different neighborhoods, and getting in here where you start to have village and town and city centers and town center here. And how you deal with all of the things that you need. So all of that's important. And then taking that and putting it into the document, understanding what each of these different character areas looks like in a really measured and specific way. So you start to see, here's what is appropriate in these areas that we've called growth areas, and those kind of things are all set up and easily understandable by everyone. So some examples of the, when we talk about taking specific areas and focusing on them, in one place we were working, they had this important corridor that came into their historic center. And they said, okay, what do we do with this? Because right now we're not really happy with the way that it's gone over the years, and we want to do something that is more in keeping with our center. And so we looked at how to take their existing situation here and how to begin to transform it into making them a proper village center, and seeing what that looked like. And based on the input that they gave us, they said, we'd like to see it be a little bit more dense in the middle, but preserving out around the edges and having walkable streets and sidewalks and all of those kind of things, and making it clear where our center, our heart of our town is. And so we're actually going to be bringing with us 2 artists, and they're going to be doing these kind of things to help really articulate clearly what's going on. So here's another situation where they said, we've got lots of open farm fields. What do we do with them? And so they wanted an increment of development that would work for a small developer to be able to do something that would be contextually appropriate in the rural context. And so we developed this little hamlet model for them, so you could, instead of just putting cul-de-sacs all around, they could have some of that type of thing going on, but then have more intensity in the center. And this was the field that they were interested in talking about, and we showed how they could do this and still conserve actually agriculture land as well as wilderness around it, and still again having a nice center that's easily identifiable. So we have to think about all these things so that we make sure we can get it right Londonderry, which is the name of the new plan. Okay, we're not going to ask you to vote on it because that would take too long, but we went ahead and took liberties. Now, some of you may have seen this image around before, and just so you know, I know it's hard to find a green apple around here, right? Mostly red, but I researched and made sure that you actually did have some green ones, because this color scheme worked and all of that stuff, and I knew somebody would come up and say, you don't know squat about this town. You put a green apple. What are you doing? So we researched and made sure. So get it right Londonderry, and we want that to be the challenge for you guys to challenge each other. Let's make sure we get it right. It's a little in your face, but we knew that you guys could handle that. We heard. You might be telling us, get it right. So we thought we'd preempt it. So here's some stuff I've learned in conversations with people around the town. So I'll ask you these questions. So who here has someone in your family you have to drive around everywhere? Over it? Right? You over it? Look at this guy. He's over it. I know that. And behind those glasses, she's crying. So who here can't drive? Bored? Okay. So the thing that's interesting, though, because it's kind of an unfair question, because all kids that can't drive kind of get bored. But the thing that you'll find is in a small town, from the youngest to the oldest, you'll see a difference in how bored they are. Because this guy, he's like, okay, what's something that's going on over there? I can check that out. That's not bad. I get it. You know, I can go to the ballpark. I can do whatever. There's some fun stuff here. He's like, okay, I might want to look over there every now and then. And she's like, oh my goodness, I'm over this. So bored happens. So who here wants to retire and grow old in Londonderry? Here we go. So, sorry. What we found is you can retire, but at a certain point, you actually have to leave the town. You have to move, because at the point at which you can no longer drive, unless you go live with someone else in your family or someone else who's willing to, help you out, or the point at which you can no longer take care of your property, there's nowhere here in town, at least so I've been told, to go and be. And so you have to leave your town. I could be wrong, so if I am, you guys tell me. And then the last thing, who has kids here? Okay? So 18, whatever age, see ya. That's what I've heard. They go and they leave town. And we have a few here who raised their hands and said they want to retire here, so that's good. But in general, what I've been hearing is that they go and they don't come back until the holidays, and they come and visit you. And then maybe they get to the point where they want to go find a place to go back and raise their kids, and so maybe they'll move back, hopefully, and then you get to be around your grandkids and on and on. But what we find is, and the day that I found this insight, that I was told this, I actually came across an article randomly while I was in the building across the street, and it's talking about people who strand themselves in their communities because they fight against growth and fight against walkability, on and on and on, because the place they moved was the suburbs, and that's the way they liked it. And they don't care, they like, I don't mind driving, that's no problem. Who cares about walkability? And that's fine, so long as you can drive. But the article talked about people stranding themselves and having regret down the road for the decisions they made up until that point. So how do we figure all of that out? So these are some of the things again, this is kind of how we did. So we report back to you what we've heard. I had enough time to at least have a visual here this time, but and I couldn't find like a kid with a stick with a handkerchief tied on it, and I wanted to find a kid jumping on the train, but couldn't find that. So anyway, so what's the point? So thinking about creating places that are, contextually appropriate, that are, what's of this place, but finding a balance so that there's something for everyone. There's something for everyone at every stage of their life. Looking at here, this just happened. It's impromptu little get-together. Hey, let's just pull the table out on the sidewalk or whatever. Looking around most towns that are, that are rural in nature, this couldn't happen because there's, in a lot of cases, not a sidewalk or the street's not safe enough or whatever. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And then here, here's another point. This is good, and these kids are always going to have a fond memory of the place that they were doing this. And that's going to be embedded in them, and maybe they'll come back one day. But how do we create places that are special for the kids? Now, what I learned is also that you guys have the commons there. Is there a name for it? The commons. Okay, perfect, great. And that this is something you might see happen there, right? But what you don't see happen, and we'll talk about this if anyone cares, is people just there. Like, hey, let's go throw a Frisbee over in the commons. Maybe every now and then. Maybe a picnic or two. But not on a regular basis. That's what I've been told. Okay? So one thing we'll talk about is it important to move the commons from an event space to an everyday space? So that's something interesting. Yeah? The common. No S at the end. Okay.
Well, there is a lot that goes on the common.
Yeah?
Concerts on the common every Wednesday night this summer.
Right. Right. Good. Okay. Cool. Yes. Right. So she says all those things that happen there are planned. It needs to be just a park or something that you can just go to at a spur of the moment. So, okay, cool. So how do you stay connected? How do you stay involved as we go through this process together? So, You guys have a Facebook page now. The plan has one. And I know there's a group of people in this room who all know how to use Facebook. And there may be a group of people who none of you know how to use Facebook. The good news is you shouldn't have to actually have a Facebook membership to get on it. You should be able just to go to it and check it out. And you can go to facebook.com/Londonderry Master Plan. And for those who don't have the internet, there will be articles in the newspaper. There are cards on your table. There will be all of the events that you can come and participate in face-to-face. And as we go through this process, information will be posted on here as we do work. As information comes out, it will all be there. Now, we actually set up a booth at voting day. And so that was kind of our first time to reach out. And so we got some of these cards like you see on your table. So I just wanted to show a couple of these things. They're kind of cool. One word to describe Londonderry now, rural, and in the future, thriving. Here you go, now spacious, in the future expanding, now bucolic, in the future crowded, quaint and cultural, scattered, Max Apples, and hopes a true town center is created, and then wonderful and super. So we're starting to get some ideas from that, but what we also wanted to do was to hopefully, I thought maybe by using this image we would actually fill the room, thinking you guys are thinking we're going to turn you into a city, not a town. And but what it turns out, if you haven't gotten a chance to read the words up here, this is the original Londonderry. This is where the settlers of this Londonderry came from. And it's kind of interesting because they have Londonderry and Derry as well, but it just depends on what your political and religious affiliations are, which one it is. And so all the signs say Londonderry/Derry. And so I happened to, believe it or not, meet someone from Londonderry, Ireland yesterday. And I said, guess where I'm going tomorrow? And he said, oh, okay, well, just tell him it's really called Slashtown. Londonderry/Derry. And so that way you don't have to distinguish, and you just call it Slashtown. So I thought that was kind of cool, little facts. Hopefully bring you something you didn't know about your own town. But I thought it was kind of cool also because here in the distance is, they're very urban, but in the foreground is the agriculture and the wilderness. And so I was hoping to kind of freak some people out. Between that and the green apples, I was sure we were going to pack the room. Totally didn't work, but we'll try that. So now what I want to do is invite Matt up here to join me so we can walk through and start actually hearing from you for the first time. I've been so anxious to do this and to talk about vision. And we're just going to tag team this and have it as a conversation. So Matt, why don't you start us off here? Some ground rules.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? In the back? Good? Right? Okay. Well, as Brian started and mentioned that it's going to be sort of a tag team effort with myself and Brian kind of taking center stage at different points during the project. Some other ways to keep us straight. We think of Brian as Mr. Personality. I will be Mr. Accountability. Brian may be Mr. Vision. I will make sure we don't hallucinate. So in those regards, my job and role in the project is really to make sure that what we do makes sense, to make sure that what we do has longevity once the process is over, and it's a useful document and useful process that everybody was proud of and can support after the consultant has disengaged a little bit. And so in that regard, we're keeping our eyes on a couple things. How many people in the room are aware that there actually are state statutes that tell us how we have to prepare a comprehensive plan? Right? The good news is, compared to other states we work in, they're not that detailed and they're not that strict. Right? When we go,
It means we can be creative and dream big and hallucinate.
That's right. So we got it. But there are some things we need to keep our eye on. So we're going to be doing that. There's also some requirements that we want to make sure we meet for public involvement and for partnering and those kind of things. And believe it or not, there is sort of systems and methods to our madness. And so Brian had mentioned a couple of the things that we've already started doing to get into the community. And a couple of those things like the stakeholder meetings. Now those have predominantly been with planning board members at this point. They filled the first slots, but that'll be going on through the entire Planapalooza event, as well as even some follow-ups if we have to for fatal flaw discussions and those kind of things. How many people in the room may have taken the telephone survey?
Do we have any lucky winners
Anybody?
of the survey? Yeah, all right.
Okay. The results of that should be coming out soon. We look forward to reading that to see what the results were from a scientific survey, pure random. to see some thoughts and opinions of the town. We also have, as Brian mentioned, the little cards that have what you like, what you don't like. We're also going to have tonight's meeting and tonight's presentation in order to have an interaction and a question and answer. And then finally that long 7-day Planapalooza event as well. All that stuff is going into the first of 2 requirements. As I mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility, but there's 2 requirements that we have to meet. One of them is we have to have a section all about vision that sets forth where we are today and where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And it's got to be the tone for the rest of the plan. So those things that I just mentioned are helping us move towards a vision. And at this point, we're not using the word vision. We're trying to find the word themes, because right now we're still sifting through the data. And then we need to get your fingerprints on it to decide where the value is within some of those statements and things that keep reoccurring. The second item that is required is the land use element. And so we're going to be preparing that as well. So that's going to be a major focus for our event when we come back for the multi-day event, are those 2 required elements. Now, everything else is optional to most communities. But if you read our contract, just about everything optional is required as part of this project. So if you want to go, and maybe this is just sort of a did you know, how many people are aware already right now that on the town's webpage there is a resources page for the master plan? Has anybody been there? Okay. When you look at what I'm talking about, there are those links at the bottom of that page that are very, very important. And one of them is the state statutes that are required. Some other things are some guidebooks and things that have been written by some regional planning agencies. That might be some stuff if you just want to get a foundation underneath you, you might want to take a look at. Some of those things we need to follow. Some things are just suggestions. But we're going to go ahead and do that as well. And like I said, except I think, and I may even be wrong if the energy element was required or not, but I think everything else that says optional is something that we are bringing a subject matter expert to for the multi-day event. So we do plan to look at all of those things and how they influence those 2 required elements, that being vision and land use. So with that, like Brian said, we just want to kind of tag team and stuff. We want to be able to answer any questions you have about vision, process, how do we get it done, what are our goals for what happens afterwards, how is this a useful document for the community and staff, those kind of things. And then anything we can record in terms of likes, dislikes, and attitudes towards a vision. We're not going to go ahead and scribe everything you say, because when we turn our back, that's when momentum stops.
She's actually writing over there, though, so that's the good news.
Yeah.
With a pen, not a big marker. So.
But instead, as everybody knows, these events are recorded, so we'll be rewatching this and taking our notes from it. So please speak up and let us know what you think. Who's dying for that first question? Yeah.
Who's first? Yes. Let's see. I'm going to start by asking, where do you think it should be? Oh, yes. How do you, thank you, because they're recording this too. So the question is, how do we determine where the town center is going to be, and what data do we use? Right. Right. Yeah. So places you have to go park and walk to. Right. Yeah. So that's I think going to be maybe one of the key topics of discussion as we go through this process, because for every place that we go, everyone who doesn't have one currently wants a center, wants a heart, to know where it is. And you guys are lucky in that you actually do have a place where you have these events and things, so you can. As I've asked people, it's funny. There are 2 things. Three ways it happens. You guys gave me the third way. The first way is they say, "Oh, it's down there at so-and-so square," or whatever. The other way is when I say, "Where's the heart of your town or city?" They say, well, we have parades in the parking lot over there, and that's where they all start, and then prom happens in the so-and-so, and that it goes on from there. Well, then you guys actually did this thing in between where you say, well, if I had to say where the center was, I guess I would say the Commons, right? And so you could come up with it, but it took there was this delayed reaction, and it was like you were convincing yourself that there was one. And so for me, it was the second trip and 6th time passed. that I was like, oh, there it is. I get it. Okay, and there's the thing there, and so defining that heart, I think, will be a key topic. So great first question. Who's next? Yes.
And Andre's got a microphone, so
Yeah.
we can.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm glad you guys came here from your various distant places, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Vermont. My question is kind of a big one. All right.
Uh-oh.
At the end, we're going to have this picture of what we want, of this downtown, these nice drawings. Where does the money come from to make this happen?
Yeah. Well, I'll give the my answer, and then I'll let Matt give you a real answer. But I always tell people, you start with a bake sale, and then you go on for. They have a thing now called Kickstarter.com, where if you have a good idea, you can go on the web, and people can put money in from all over the world, so they can say, help us figure out how to build our heart. But then there's a lot of different, actual ways to do it. I'll let Matt talk about.
The one who has to actually write the check for him, right? You know where the bill goes at dinner. No, there are a lot of ways you can do it. And again, I think what we do best is we learn from other examples. And for example, like when I work in South Carolina, they specifically by state law require something called a priority investment element. And what they do there is they inventory all the ideas, all the projects, the recommendations that are throughout the plan. They try to prioritize those on which ones need to be done concurrent with the plan, short-term, mid-year, long-term. And then they try to say, well, how much would that roughly cost and who's responsible for it? And what happens is there's two avenues. One is you can spend your money. The town will have resources from year to year that you can start to plan and program. But the second thing is to prepare that information in a way that you can go spend other people's money. So for example, you get extra points with a grant application if you have an adopted master plan that calls for it. If you have extra points there, if it was done in a community planning process, rational planning process, you get extra points. Other times, and the third way is to spend the developer's money. In a lot of ways, there is no reason why the town needs to go back and retrofit everything. I don't know if I had mentioned, but I'm the chairman of the planning board in the village that I live in. 5,000 people. We're small, but we're only about 22 miles from
Not
the
even
center.
a town. Certainly not a
No.
city.
We're a village, and proud of it. But we're about 22 miles from the center of Charlotte. So I mean, we've got great access to all that stuff, but we choose to live in an equestrian community and some of those type of things. But where it goes is I just had an application because a neighborhood wants to put a gate across their neighborhood because they're tired of people cutting through traffic. And putting in that gate shook our community to its core, saying we are not sort of an elitist mentality. We don't want to shut ourselves off. We want to be very engaging and all that. But there was a huge traffic issue. Well, you know what the real issue was? Was that my zoning ordinance and me as a planning board member who had to adhere to my zoning ordinance were approving residential streets that were 36 feet wide and straight as an arrow. And you could go as fast as you want. And the Department of Transportation would not approve stop signs unless they met the warrants, so the manual uniform traffic control devices. If you want to go to sleep, I can explain that in more detail to you. But in reality, a lot of times we set ourselves up for the failure, and then we have to pay for it to fix it, to go do traffic calming or to go do something else. So I think there's a couple of things. One, position yourself to spend your money wisely. Two, prioritize so when you spend your money, you're getting the best bang for your buck. When quote-unquote free money comes in because the development is coming in, the application's coming in, make sure things are designed in a way you're proud of it and it fits into the plan. And then the third is if you can go after other public money, state, federal, whatever, have your plan ready to fill in those checklists because I'll tell you right now, it's very competitive. That line for money is very long. So the more points you can get in your application because of a good plan and a good planning process, the better.
The other thing, and last thing before we go on to the next question is when we set these documents up, it's great to dream and think about. I mean, I think our planning horizon here is 10 to 20 years. It's pretty, we tend to think, 100 years in the future, but we'll try to, restrain ourselves for you guys since that was our official task. But what we like to do is say, fine, 10, 20-year big ideas are great, but what can they do tomorrow, the day after we leave? and to come up with some of those, and we say, do this thing first, because we know that if you see something happen, you will get excited, and the next thing will happen, and you build momentum, and it doesn't have to be a big deal what happens first, but something needs to happen. It needs to happen soon, because you're going to go through all of this in the Planapalooza, and you're going to show up, and you're going to give your whole week and be there all the time, all right, and all your neighbors too, and you're going to go, what did we talk about again? You know, if nothing's happened for 2 years. And so we're going to set things up so you'll have those baby steps that will snowball into the big ideas down the road. Yes?
Because we have to do this on a regular basis, we're already assuming that we won't get it all done in 10 years. Will there be continuity within the plans so you can move on to the next group? Because undoubtedly, we'll be doing it again in 10, 11, whatever years by law.
Yeah, well, what we hoped is that because we're basing it on these fundamentals, you know, things that are, you know, timeless, that in 10 years when you look at it again, you're going to go, hey, TPDC, come over here and take a look at our plan again. And then we go, good job. And then we go home, and it was that easy. So there's that kind of continuity, and then you don't have to completely reimagine everything every 10 years. So yes, and also looking, you know, we will look at your old plan too, and the one before that, and see what has been accomplished for a couple of reasons. One, to see what kind of things you're able to get done around here, you know, and then that can help us think, okay, well, if we're going to prioritize things, they can get this kind of thing done really easily. This other thing took them, you know, 5 years, and this other thing never got done. And so we can then start to think about that as well. So continuity is an important thing. Yes?
I'd like to make sure that we keep an eye on where our town has come from, though. I mean, I heard a startling statistic the other day that in 1980, when a friend of mine's parents moved here, there was one blinking light in this whole town. And now look at our town, which, you know, I'm not unhappy with our town. I think our town has responded to the growth that has been, you know, that has been brought here, but what do we want our town to look like in the future? How many more lights do we want to have there? You know, how much more traffic, how much more whatever. So I just hope we keep an eye on where we came from, and, you know, when we're looking at where we want to go.
Sure. No, that's a great point. And I think for us, I don't know if it's just that I'm a history buff or whatever, and I like this, and looking backwards, and you see I go back pretty far, even before you were here, anyone was here, but then also, you know, being fascinated by the steps that, you know, a place grows. Now, the thing that I find interesting about this place is it's nearly like in the natural evolution of a settlement. You know, you start off with a few people with a few farms at the crossroads, and then it's like, oh, well, a lot of people are going by here for various reasons, and then and a few more houses, and then you grow, and you become a hamlet, and then the hamlet grows and becomes a village, and the village grows and becomes a town, on and on and on. And it's like at a moment, you guys stopped, right? And for a long time. And, you know, there was a split, and then Derry went and did its thing, and all of those kind of things. But at the moment at which you stopped, it kind of had this weird moment in the evolution, and it disrupted the natural progress of this place, which left it in a sort of a rural-esque setting. And then people came here in the, you know, the vintage of, you know, planning and development, in which, you know, the greatest amount of suburbia was built. And so you start getting, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, you know, we're rural. And we want to make sure you keep the Londonderry you know, so unique. It has to be unique. And so for me, my question was, when I went on my tour around town, was when I saw the, you know, conventional suburban development, you know, I said, oh wow. When you guys were telling me about how rural it was and how unique it was, then, you know, I didn't expect to come across that, because some other roads I went down and I said, wow, this is so cool, these stone walls, and not just stone walls, but these round, rubbly looking rocks. It's really cool, something I've not seen somewhere else, and the way that the houses are nestled in the woods here and there, and there's, instead of, you know, lawns in most of the neighborhoods, it's trees and woodland, you know, and it's sort of, I saw the unique things, but then I saw the other things as well. And I don't know if, and I want you guys to, you know, kind of fill us in as we go through this process, but as you guys have grown and evolved from, you know, just an agrarian settlement to what you are today, when we're talking about the future, are we talking about more of the stuff that happened after the pause, or are we talking about doing things in a different way in a way that you don't see anywhere else. And those other places just happen to be there and they're convenient for you and you don't need to go there to shop and do things. So we'll talk a lot about those kind of things as well. So I think that's a good question. What else? Yes?
I want to go back a step, back to the town green, or the common, as it seems to bother me a little bit. It was brought up in the Big W issue, and now here. And my question is, I'm getting the sense that the common is inadequate to some people, and that seems to be a driving force. And the question is, I don't know if you researched this, but what was inadequate about it that we have to talk about relocating a town center that from the voting day clearly saw people putting it right down the street here. So I don't know where this concern is coming about that they want to move the common or the town center to somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And in that regard, at this point, my only opinion about it is just from a theoretical perspective, just purely if you ask me from out of town without asking any citizens, where should the town heart be, I would say where all those dots were. And so what does that mean? Well, then you do something to make it clear that that's what that is. Usually a clearly defined town or village common in New England has stuff around it, more than just a couple of churches. Usually it has a couple of churches, but it has also some commercial activity and things like that. In most cases, there are some exceptions. And so from a purely theoretical perspective, that's what I would have expected people to say. I would show you a picture of that and you'd say, yes, we would love it if we took that next step towards that. However, what I heard was some people saying that, yes, we like that. I heard some people saying, I'd like it to be where it is and just be like it is. And then I heard other people saying, well, I like it where it is, to be like it is, but the real center would be somewhere else. And so it was very interesting, different perspectives from all different kinds of people. So we'll dig into that and see what, kind of throw up against the wall and see what sticks. And, I don't know where it's going to land. We may, foil planning theory in Londonderry, so we'll see. Yes?
Londonderry being an outspoken and creative community, I think you're going to get lots of good feedback as to what the citizens want. But that being characterized as the what, where I think we may be a little short of is how to get the what. And that's why I would hope that you folks could at some point in the process interject your experiences and your the other communities that you've seen, because you've probably seen many communities who have implemented the how quite poorly,
right,
as well as the how quite well. And perhaps you can, without being instructive, but at least by being helpful, coach us as to the good side of the how so that we can implement what we want but do it well. Is that expected somewhere during the process?
Yes, we can't help ourselves. We tend to do that to the point that people say, enough about other cities, other towns, other villages, other hamlets. Tell us Londonderry stuff. And so you'll find no shortage of that with us, and that's just kind of our MO.
I think what's interesting too, and it was in a different project that Brian and I were talking about this afternoon with staff, was one of our measures of success is to avoid the $1 million shelf, which is to just put another report on the shelf,
right,
which is the what and not the how. You're not going to build any faith within the community if it's just in a plan that's bound. It's got to come out of the ground at some point. Otherwise, the how becomes you didn't impress me. So it's got to be the how.
I think the elephant in the room is the Big W development. I kind of feel like if we're talking about potentially wanting to do something to change the common, I don't know if that's what we do want to do, but if that becomes part of the discussion, my concern is why would we spend time, effort duplicating what might become a duplicate of a town common that might develop because of the other development? I mean, if they tend to put in a park that does become an everyday drawing facility for people, as opposed to our common, which, quite honest, really is an event drawing facility. We don't know what's going to come of that, so how can we possibly plan what we should do? Because I wouldn't want to, as I say, spend time and effort duplicating what might be built by the developer and not my tax dollars.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that one's going to come up over and over again throughout our time here. So hopefully, as we learn more about the issues and the actual what everyone's thinking, we'll be able to say, well, based on this, this, and this might be something to consider, and we can think and talk about that, and let's draw that, and let's see. So hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it, and I don't know. It seems like it's a pretty hot topic here, so I don't know. It's one of those. Sometimes there are those hot topics that you just can't get to the bottom of. We do our best, and it just depends on you guys, really, if we get to the bottom or not. So,
but the
Right.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point.
But, and the unfortunate part is, going back to the private money, if it was a race, they'd probably win the race in terms of building it. So, there's a lot of things to consider. One of the merits to this multi-day event, this Planapalooza, is that we can have competing ideas running side by side to try to figure out which one might be a better idea. And we continue to have stakeholder input and those kind of things as we go. It may not mean that we end up coming to a conclusion on that at the end of that event, because as Brian mentioned, there's some follow-up work. But going back to the how question, we may be able to challenge you a little bit and say, okay, if these are the two alternatives, here's the hows that go underneath those two alternatives. Now, if we can just help you make a more educated decision, we've still done you some good after that event. And so that's kind of where we're going. I think what's interesting, and I won't give you too much of my editorial, but what's great about this community to me is that at 22,000 people, plus or minus, right? Current population? 24. Okay. 24. And you've earned every one of them, right? Well, that's where I was going. As a community of that size, and to not have that regular community gathering area already, shows the resilience of this place to want to remain a community. And what I mean by that is you must be doing it in ways that are sort of swimming upstream, volunteering a lot, crossing paths, knowing your neighbors. Because what happens when 22 or 24,000 with remaining unchecked becomes 48,000? I'm just throwing a number out there. Where is that tipping point that the good work that you all are just doing as citizens of your town needs some type of physical reinforcement to allow you to do better job of being a community? And that may be the reason, first, to identify the need. And now that then we have the need and some of the criteria under that need, then we can evaluate two different sites and locations. It might be travel distance, proximity, access, buildability, timeline to build. I mean, all those different things we can look at.
Some things that I hear are actually really interesting, though, is as I've been talking to people, is some people would say, 48,000, are you kidding me? No way. Like, not even 25,001. Like, let's just, right now, this is done. We're done.
We're digging the moat as we speak.
Right. And then on the other hand, I've heard people say, bring it on. This is awesome. If we get more people, we have more opportunities to have more of the things that I actually now have to go to other cities to take care of, and all of those kinds of things. So it's really interesting, kind of dynamic between the two different, or not even just two. There's in every spectrum in between. So the good news is that we like to have these hard conversations. We like to just sit down and say, okay, just tell me straight. What's the deal? What do we need to know? And we'll help you guys sort through it all. So. Yes. Sorry, Mike.
I was curious what you guys have in mind for the younger generation to come at this Woodmont Commons.
Yeah. No. Well, we're not here to talk. We're not planning Woodmont Commons. I don't know what Woodmont Commons is underway on its own, but I think just in general, we are looking to you guys to tell us for what is important to young people, what's going to make you guys stick around? What's going to make you want to come back? We've actually heard a lot of people have been moving back after school, after college or whatever, and moving back in with their parents here in town, and while they're looking to find a job and those kinds of things. So it's already kind of, oh, it's a bummer, got to live with my folks, but wow, this is a pretty cool place. I don't mind so much. It's great, free rent, right? And so how do we make a place that you guys want to stick around in and come back and not have to go move off to the big city before you do to have your own kids? So, yes.
Hi. I'm not used to a mic. I'm just wondering, just looking around the room, I have to say that the students here is great, but it's a pretty poor turnout otherwise, I think,
Yeah,
and I'm
really.
just wondering, no, that's
Otherwise,
great.
it would
It's
look like
great
no
to
one was
see.
here.
It's great to see students. But I'm just wondering, sort of a two-part question. If you can explain the Planapalooza a little bit more, what exactly it's going to entail, because I want to be able to entice my friends to come to this
Right.
and everything. And also, if you have any suggestions from your experience in the past as to how to draw more people, because I find when I go to these things, it's usually the same group of people.
Right.
So it'd be nice to see new faces.
Right. No, that's a
Thank
great
you.
one. I think it starts with you guys.
Before you answer that question, can I take off on her question?
Okay, sure.
Right. In the year 2000, I was in this room, and there were 600 people here because we tried to put through a wetlands ordinance. Okay, so there were 600 people in this room. That's the most people that have ever been in this room, okay, for a meeting. What happens is that we need a mechanism to draw the people in. All right, tonight I did an umpires clinic. There were 200 kids right behind the fire department and 300 adults over there behind, and not for the umpires clinic, but for everything else that was going on. All right? Only 2,000 people voted out of 16,000, 17,000 registered voters. There's 24,000 people in the town. Unless you can come up with a mechanism to get them here for this Planapalooza thing, it will be a Planapalooza. Nothing will happen.
Nice.
Okay, and it's going to be a big waste of money, and we're going to be right back where we started. So unless you have a mechanism to get them in the room or to get this out into the community, this lady right here is right. We're going nowhere.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing I will say, and hopefully this is being broadcast on TV. Something will happen whether or not you come. There will be a plan written, and you can decide whether or not your input goes into it. And if you don't, we're just going to make it up with these people right here. So it's going to be our plan, right? So all of you on the TV. Right?
That's not the answer. What I asked you was, do you have a mechanism to get them?
No. It's on you. It's on Londonderry. We're the consultants. We're from out of town. We do the postcards. We do the things. Here's what we are going to do. Okay, don't tell anybody so we can shock people. We had an idea since we heard there was this thing with the kids leaving town. So we're going to get the moms on the PA at the ball field and says, hey, our kids are leaving town and not coming back. We got to shock people a bit. We're going to have a kid come up and say, hey, Mom, I'm out of here, right? I don't know what else to do. I don't know. We come to cities, we come to towns, we come to villages, we come to hamlets, and the turnout differs every place, even if we use the same tools and techniques. What I found is it's on the community to show up. It's not for me to make you come. You got to come. These kids are here. They can tell their friends tomorrow, I went to this thing, it was all right. That's good. We're talking about what we want in the future. You guys are here. You need to go tell at least 10 people and say if you don't come, it's your own fault. And I'm glad you said that because now I'm kind of fired up. So. Okay.
Every single one. Oh.
So from now on, we're calling these Woodmont Commons meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we told people, we emailed people. Letha had us all write her and say, who do we know? Well, I happen to know 300 Democrats, which is about all there are in Londonderry. But this is a really, really poor turnout.
Yeah. What do we do? What do we do? How do you how do we get 200
I don't know, maybe
umpires?
free beer?
Free beer. We got ZD. Come on.
I know, ZD.
It is interesting. I have had these challenges in the past, and the example of the wetlands ordinance was great. People, and this is just Americans in general, respond to controversy and threats more than they will ever respond to the goodwill and community duty to do planning.
Potluck. Come on. Who wants to eat somebody else's food? You got to make me mad before I'm going to come, right?
So, for example, we did a corridor study called Murchison Road when I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we put up one of those DOT variable message board signs, and we said, we're widening the road. That ticked a lot of people off. It meant the first 20 minutes of our presentation was a talk me off the ledge, calm down a little bit. But what may end up happening, and what may be the best course here, but we would need your input for that, is for us to identify the 5 most critical issues that whether you're pro or con against it, you're passionate about it. And we need to each day or at some point say, we're going to, at a minimum, address that issue. And so now your input's going to want to be needed. Because if it's not, the plan goes nowhere. It's interesting what people say, and it's a couple of items. Creating a comprehensive master plan is never threatening until the map is rolled out, right? And now you say, oh, you meant my property was going to look like that? And it's never an issue until you talk about actually something that's going to affect their lives specifically. So, for example, I go back to, because it's my current headache at home, the gate. Well, lo and behold, the village council, because they don't want gates, tried to pass a 1-sentence text amendment that outlawed them all outright. Okay? That filled the room. And we weren't even talking about the gate. We were talking about what the vision of the community was. But we got them there because of the gate. And so I need to find out, as we do our homework to prep, what is that issue that is so passionate?
Hunting.
Hunting.
Do we have your permission, everybody here, to say inflammatory things and freak people out a little bit in our marketing message? No? Oh. Well, we got some people. Yes. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we don't want to...
Oh, where's the mic? Andre, can we get the mic down here?
But I do look good in all orange.
Take my mic.
I do.
I hope so. I've been talking a lot.
That's why we're still smiling.
For once, I don't have to say my name and address at a meeting. It's nice. Now, is this Planapalooza, is this change for change's sake, or do we really want this? Do we like the town the way it is? Are we just trying to throw out a lot of wants instead of really needs? Are we doing this, and will our taxes go up because of this? A lot of questions. And also, don't take this personally, but being proponents of new urbanism, how do you detach yourself from thinking along the lines of compact, high-density planning and adjust to rural Londonderry?
Sure you want the answer? Okay, so here's the deal. The thing that's interesting about the new urbanism word you used is that the images that I showed, starting in the most rural to the most urban, I'll say that's the one time I'll say the urban word, means that there's a place for everything within that continuum. We happen to be, and one of the reasons why these guys picked us is we focus on the whole concept of rural, because so many people who are doing new urbanism these days come to a place like this and do the same thing they did in some other place that's not necessarily appropriate in this place. And so I had this whole, the way that I convinced these guys to pick us was, I have this library of books about villages and hamlets and towns, and that's why I know the things I'm talking about, the natural growth and evolution of these things. Because at a certain point, I don't know if it's because I'm from the South and we have lots of rural places or whatever, but I just kind of got tired of people saying, well, we're going to throw a little urban agriculture at you and call it rural. And I said, let's figure out what this is about. And so we traveled the country and the world and looked in these books and tried to understand what is the essence of rural. And so when I go to a place, I can actually say to you, rural, because somebody came to me outside a minute ago and said, no, we call ourselves rural, but we're not really rural here. We're actually suburban with a rural twist, right? And so those are the kinds of discussions we can have. But the way that I don't have to detach myself. I just understand that there's an appropriate context for everything, and everybody has different preferences for how they want to live their life. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. And I can't do for you here what I'm doing in Burlington, and I can't do in Burlington what I'm doing in South Burlington. I don't know if you know the difference in the two. One is totally suburban and one is urban. And even though the urban place has some detached single-family houses on large lots set back from the street, it's different than the lifestyle in South Burlington. And so we have to do a whole different thing to make a distinction between the two, because it has to be of that place and make sure we understand the difference. So I don't have to make any effort to do it. I'm passionate about it, and that's, I'm speaking for these, people on the selection committee, but I think that's why they picked us, so it's easy for me. Now, I'm keeping my mic. What?
First question, Deep versus Lawn.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm terrible about when people ask me multiple questions in a row. I always forget usually not the first one. It's usually the second and the third one. But, yeah, so I don't know. That's what you guys are going to tell us. You have to, I think, officially do your plan every so often, right? They have the time.
You just have to review it every 5
Right.
to 10 years. You don't have to do anything different every
Right.
5 to 10 years.
So we don't. Yeah, we could maybe not do anything, and if that's what people are looking for, then you just tell us that as we go through the Planapalooza. I'll tell you though, I've already heard some people do want something, new and different. But that doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong, or that you're right and they're wrong. For me, again, it's something for everyone in every context, and so we have to figure that out, because right now, if the anecdotes that I've heard about the kids leaving and all of that stuff are true, and the population is aging and the demographics will tell us that, then at a certain point, if you actually have a monoculture, an age monoculture, and everyone's aging together, the place literally could go extinct, and so nobody wants that. And so we will need to think about providing all of those opportunities for people and for nature and all of the other things that are important to you guys. And so these are things we'll talk about throughout the process. So keep coming back and keep saying, I'm kind of cool with how it is. Don't worry about it. Just don't draw too much. And that's okay. That's worthy.
Just one other thing. I will jump in though. And what I found working with other communities, and I already have an inclination here because I've looked at your build-out study, is if we decide after the group exercise that we like it exactly how it is, it actually means we do need to do some work, which is to say, well, if we don't do anything, by right zoning and all that kind of stuff is already going to change who we are.
True.
And so we may need to change some of that zoning to stay who we are, or to stay at a certain population or that. So right now, I'm less likely to think the do-nothing approach works, because right now you are at a certain size and you're growing, but the recipe that's out there in your zoning and stuff is to continue to grow right now. Not that may not be the right thing to do, but if it's not, then we need to match your zoning and your plan and everything else with the right size you want to be, and then be done.
Because we know you're not actually afraid to buy development rights here. I know the apple orchards and all that stuff. I mean, that's because some places will be here, they say, oh, we don't want any more growth. And we're like, well, are you going to buy the development rights? And here you guys say, well, okay, yeah, so. All right, you with the mic.
Okay,
Yeah.
so honestly, I think Woodmont Orchards would be a really good idea, because, I mean, not only would it become a town center, but like just what goes in it would be really good for future generations. Like, I know we only have a movie theater. Like, that's all that we do in Londonderry.
You have one here.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
But that's the only thing
I'm going
there
to a
is.
movie tonight.
So, I mean, we would definitely need to put in more things for like future generations, because we get bored.
So it was not untrue what I heard.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Good. Thanks. Yes.
I just wanted to speak to the issue of new urbanism, because I am on the master plan committee, and I was on the subcommittee that chose the consultants, and these guys probably never used the phrase new urbanism, which we've heard a lot from Woodmont. I don't believe that you guys are big proponents of new urbanism.
We do it. It's on our webpage. It says so.
Yeah.
We know all about it, and we do it.
But
we've never tried to tell you about it and tell you to do it, and that's the thing, I think, is the big distinction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. She's not wrong.
We have a comment over here.
Yes, I'm hearing a few things, and I've lived in this town a very long time, probably longer than anyone else here. This town really ceased being rural about 20,000 people ago. It was rural when I grew up here in the 1950s, but it's not rural anymore. It's suburban. And I have, over the years, Well, part of what I did was work on one of the previous master plans in this town as a member of the planning board. I heard a comment saying, let's just keep it the way it is. And I would caution you folks, I have looked and I've been here. It's not going to stay the way it is. It's going to change. Things evolve over time. What this process is to determine how it's going to change, not if it's going to change. So what you're trying to do here is put a direction for yourself to get it a little closer to where you think is right. But it's never going to stop.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think, you know, when we look at places like this, the thing for me that's been interesting is you're only the second person that I've met, considering what we just met, now that you just talked on the microphone, that I've heard from that actually is from here. I haven't talked to that many people yet, so I'm really interested to hear from the people who are from here. Not that they get any more say-so, but it's interesting to me to see how many people have come here from elsewhere, and what that says about this place, that it's really great, a great place, you know, and the thing that people say it's a great place to raise your kids. And so what are the other reasons, and where are all the other locals? And so I want to meet more locals and hear, you know, because that, you know, how things change. Somebody was telling me, you know, I remember when there was 4,000 people here or whatever, you know, it's like, wow, that must have been really different those times. So again, just because I like history. Yes, Letha.
Brian, I just wanted to let you know, time check. We have about 5 more minutes until the meeting was technically supposed to end. That doesn't mean it has to end. I just mean for the public at large who's here.
Yeah.
Technically, we can end at 8, but obviously we can be here much longer for anyone who wants to answer questions. I just want to give people the opportunity to exit at 8 if that was their intention.
Cool.
That's more than okay.
Right.
But if I could ask too, Melissa had asked a question, I think it was a really important one, and I don't think she really got an answer to it, which was, how does she and the rest of us start to really engage people about getting excited about coming to the Planapalooza?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did. I started and then I headed on a different road.
I mean, what are some of the conversations, I guess, that we're going to have there that your team is going to sort of take point on and run with?
Yeah, I think the things that people really enjoy the most about the Planapalooza, and, you know, why they are glad they came out in the end, is because you're able to actually, we don't just come and do this. And this is like the smallest portion of what we do, that's standing up and talking and clicking on the slides and all of that. It's like that you can really, really interact and be part of it, and be able to, you know, draw with us, and to be able to dream with us, and be able to be realistic with us, and, you know, all of those other things. But telling, you know, getting the word out there that this is something different, and it's also important because here's one of the big points about this is, you know, the future of this place, be it like it is today or like it might be tomorrow, if it changes, is tied up in how you plan for that future, whether or not you plan to stay the same, or if you want to have growth and you want to bring new businesses here, new people here, new ideas here, and all of those kinds of things. There's something for everyone to talk about, to address some of the issues you may have. It may not have occurred to you that your kids may leave. It may not have occurred to you that you may not be able to get around town once you can't drive anymore. All of these things. So hopefully some of the things we'll say will be like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Now we need to do something and start doing things a little bit differently. But I think that the biggest part of it is the interactivity of the process in a way that you may not have been able to participate in a planning process before. It's not about going and drawing back at City Hall. It's not about going and drawing at our offices and talking and thinking and then coming and asking you over. I mean, it's literally our desks are sitting here, the papers are sitting here, the markers are here, and you can walk up at any time and sit down with a, you know, planner, an architect, an artist from all over the country, you know, the best of the best, and do your thing with them and tell them what you want, and we actually start taking a look at that and see what happens. So I don't know if I'm giving the best answer with this. For me, it's just so second nature. You know, it's just like, it's awesome and just trust me. But telling them to come, and again, if they don't come, it's their fault for not participating.
Well, the only other thing I'd like to add on to that is that there's no expectation that anybody can be there all 7 days, every day of the the week. I mean, as many hours we're putting in. So when Brian was going through the week at a glance, you saw there were like stakeholder meetings and theme kind of things. So what we're hoping is that if there is that hot issue of somebody, say it's greenways or something like that, that they all know and everybody in the town knows there's an opportunity that no matter what, we're going to purposely talk about greenways during this time. And so if that's your critical issue, at least come to that. And then hopefully through that experience, they'll want to come back. But we want to, what is it? Eat an elephant one bite at a time? We don't want to tell you have to come to all 7 days. Nobody will come. But if we tell you and say, hey, But if you tell somebody, hey, I know bike and ped is your passion, we're going to be talking about it on Tuesday morning and then drawing immediately after. And if you want to come back for the pinup that evening and see kind of what happened, and then you can either tell your friends and neighbors, hey, they got it, or you can say they didn't get it. We better come out in droves tomorrow, and really get it. So, we do try to be topical that way to respect people's time and make sure that we get, both friends and enemies around the table on that issue all at the same time. Because the worst thing that happens is if I say, well, I met with Brian on Monday and he told me he was pro, and I met with you on Tuesday and you're con, but you actually never look at each other and make each other's arguments and things. So we're trying to create opportunities that themes can be resolved together with everybody. So as we get to the event and we start to refine those themes and when they occur, we'll share that information. And usually that gets some more people out.
What do you think? Do you have any ideas, any tips for us about how to make it a little more sexy so people are going to
Yeah, that's right.
Matt?
I think you've got a big challenge ahead of you. I'll give you a little history. As early as the early 90s, when we had the old high school gym, we'd have 1,500 to 2,000 people show up for town meeting. And what happened over the years is, I don't know if any of you remember Attorney Carr. His son did a demographic study of Londonderry over, I don't know, a century or whatever else it was. And it turned out at the end of his study that the average stay was 7 years for a family in town. They liked the sports. They got the kids through high school. Then they left. And that goes back to what Councilor Farrell was talking about, motivation. You went from residents to transients. So how do you motivate those people to participate in the plan?
Well, that's a great comment. And I work in a lot of military towns, and it's the same way. How do you keep those people when they're only there part-time and they're renting because they don't even think they're going to stay that long? Cynthia.
Yes. Brian, I just wanted to recognize the fact that there's probably a whole table of people in this room who are from here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they are from here.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Also, Brian will be speaking tomorrow in Barbara Mee's civics class, I think at 10:40 something, so civics. So Brian will hopefully excite that group of students to join you, but challenge them to get their friends here.
Yeah.
Bribe them, I don't know.
Right. Well, and one thing we're trying to do is figure out what works. So if we tried potluck first. The next idea is cookout for the opening presentation of the Planapalooza. So we're going to do a cookout in the pavilion over there by the Common and the Lions Hall, yeah. And so we'll do cookouts, and so we see if we get you with that. We have green apples here. I don't know. Yes.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the opening presentation on Thursday, May 31st. What time is that going to be?
You tell me. I don't know. 6:30. Here we go. Schedule right here. 6
to 8:30.
6 to 8:30. Yes.
And what is the presentation going to be? A basic orientation? Are you going to have people doing breakout groups, or
yeah? What we'll
exactly
do
is that?
We'll start off with a presentation more in depth than this, not longer, hopefully, but more in depth about some specifics, some more that we've learned, and that the things that we've learned will help us generate the presentation. And then after, as soon as we're done with that and we've taken some questions and comments, then we'll actually break out around the tables in smaller groups and have facilitators either from the staff or from my team at each table, markers, maps, all of those kinds of things. And that's when you put on your planner hat, planner for the night, and you draw with us. And really, we don't draw. We just actually sit there and listen and try to coax you to actually use your marker instead of talking with your mouth, because nobody wants to make the first mark. I don't know why. So that's the gist of it. Yeah. Yes.
Ryan, I think you need to look back at the master plan that we did 10 years ago, because those of us who were there, we went through this process, and to be honest, I'm not sure I can identify too many differences in the community. I know that the Levins have been here long enough to see the rural become somewhat suburbia, but those of us who've been here for that 10-year time frame between that last master plan, I don't think we've seen enough significant difference that there's a compelling reason to bring people out. We haven't suddenly changed the direction of the community enough. If you're talking about a seven-year stint for most people to stay, that 7-year stint hasn't shown that much growth. Those who have preceded the last master plan time frame, they saw a significant amount of change, and so they were probably, let's get on this, let's put a handle on it. But the rest of us haven't seen that much change, and therefore I think the complacency is such that we're happy, and we're maybe not aware. I think the thing that woke me up the most was that you reminded us we're going to be making these changes even if we do nothing, because of the build-out opportunities, and that we do have to address some things. And so even though I may be one of these people who doesn't want to see a lot change, because I don't want to see a lot change, I think I need to be in on the detail level of making sure that the zoning fits the don't change mindset.
Yeah, we have to get it right, Londonderry, right?
Yeah, so go back to that previous master plan and find out what we did, and then if you can market that, people go, oh, that came about because of that, therefore I don't like it, or I wished we had done something differently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And, we actually worked in a place that is really rural. I'm talking dirt roads, like for the main roads, not just for the side roads and stuff. These 200-year, 300-year live oak trees, moss growing in them. It's just crazy. And they had these bumper stickers, and it says rural forever, and everybody had them, So we came to town thinking, okay, we're these rural guys. This is awesome. Well, we got there, and we opened the zoning ordinance, and we should have asked them what the zoning ordinance said before we accepted the job. We opened it up, and it said that the land that everyone was saying was rural forever was zoned 29 units per acre. They did it to incentivize the landowners to annex into the city, and there was just no market for it for all these years, and so no one had ever taken advantage of this 29 units per acre. So everyone thought rural forever, all right, and then we get there and we tell them, and they said, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. And so we had to come up with solutions to, they had to decide, are we going to downzone the landowners? And then when they said, no, we don't think that's the right thing to do, now how do we keep this rural character and still give them their property rights? And so we had to come up with this really interesting solution. It's very challenging. Rural is the hardest, by the way. It's easy in urban. It's like, oh, there's a parking lot, let's infill the gap here, et cetera, et cetera. Rural is really hard because the rural character is so fragile. It's so unique and quirky and weird sometimes that if you to standardize it in something that, like an ordinance, can neuter it of its unique nature. So it's really tricky. Yes.
In your professional opinion,
Uh-oh.
driving around the town and seeing what we are, what do you see Londonderry as, urban or rural? Considering we have 3 major grocery stores, we have 3 major, several malls, strip malls. I mean, what's your professional opinion? Where do we stand?
Yeah. I will say that I can see why there is the idea that it is rural. I think that, and actually, it's funny you asked this question because I've been trying to think of a really clever word that I can coin and start using all across the country for this condition, because it is elsewhere, not in this exact configuration, but it's like this mix of suburban and rural. And the thing that's really interesting is, while you have some suburban areas, it's not like places we go like outside of Atlanta or something like that where you've been overrun by it. So you still have the open spaces and the orchards and the things like that that everyone loves here and they're so iconic. But you have some of these moments. And so the question is, as you grow, if you grow, as you grow, is it going to be in the form of more? Like, is the next new commercial development that happens going to be in the form of a strip center, similar to the ones you have currently, or is it going to be something else? And so for me, I'm going to make up a word that describes this place, but it's definitely not urban. You currently aren't urban at all, and rural-esque is so far I'm working on it.
Maybe it's rural under threat.
Rural under
is
threat.
The term,
Right.
but
endangered. Who else? Yes. Everyone filled out your little cards, and we got those. So stack those up at the end of your table. I'll stand up here as long as people keep coming. Let's make that the last official question. And for those who made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you at Planapalooza 2012.